I'm Hunter Atkins, CEO of the Bank of Nashville, and this is another in the continuing series of our CEO Cafes, where we present speakers to the public of Nashville, and it's a gift from us to the people of Nashville. Today's speaker is RalphShultz. He's the head of our Chamber of Commerce, and he's going to speak on public education. Let me read what the Chamber of Commerce says about its mission. The Chamber of Commerce facilitates community leadership to create economic prosperity. You'll see today how economic prosperity and public education are inextricably linked. Thank you.
The CEO Cafe has been a good event for us, and it's always great to see friends of the business community. When we first started this idea, Hunter quickly supported it, and he has been instrumental in this thing getting some traction. Hunter mentioned Jim Fuller, and it was his idea to do this. He approached the Bank of Nashville. We thought it was a cool idea if there was no way we could do this on our own. Jim put this entire program together. He is going to introduce Ralph, who did an awesome job this morning, so I'd like to introduce Jim Fuller.
The speaker today, RalphShultz, has had a long background. He kind of gave me a chronology of it all the way back through the mid-70s of working with education and workforce readiness, from the Department of Labor to governor's conferences to the Edison project that you may remember Chris Whittle launched in Knoxville, to working with chambers and education initiatives here, Dallas, Denver, all across the country, and looking at school excellence and how to move toward that. We're fortunate to have him here. We were fortunate to have him here as head of the Science Museum, and there's a lot of buzz, as you know, about all the new things that are there, and I've got grandchildren that can't wait to experience that, and a lot of that flowed from Ralph's innovation. As a chamber who has had 160 years, was that the chamber, or is that how long you've been there? Is that, but as a chamber, 160-year history in Nashville, adopting education as one of its top priorities is really admirable. To know that workforce readiness and the impact that has on the economy and on business environment, and why you as a CEO ought to be concerned about it or involved in it or are wanting to know how to support it. That's our subject today, and we're fortunate to have Ralph as chamber president. We're really fortunate to have him here today. Let's give him a hand.
You know, the starting point for discussion today, you can see the topic, the importance of public education to Nashville's economy. But the real starting point that I wanted to begin with today is on a card that's right in front of you at your seat. Because from this statement on the front of that card stems the reason that the Chamber is so involved in education at this point in time. If you'll see, you'll notice there, our purpose statement is that the Chamber of Commerce, the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, facilitates community leadership to create economic prosperity. That means that whatever affects economic prosperity in the community is something that the Chamber is going to have an interest in. We approach this in a very diverse way. We have a very diverse board of directors. We have a community report card group that studies education. That is a diverse representation of the entire community. We are involved in numerous activities across the community because we believe economic prosperity is about everyone. It's for everyone, and everyone needs to be a participant in it. And so when assessing the needs of the community some years ago, because this isn't just happening at the Chamber, the Chamber leadership, the community leadership, identified the fact that the fundamental building block of economic prosperity is education. And it identified, along with others in the community, that that we are not delivering the quality of educational value that we need to the community to ensure prosperity in the future, either for individuals or for communities. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the PowerPoint. But the thing I really want to stress here is that from a chamber perspective, this is the essence, the fundamental building block of prosperity for the future in this community, and everyone in this community should share in that prosperity. So let's just talk a little bit now about what's happening in the areas of education, what our current situation is, our circumstance is. Then we're going to kind of move to what some possible solutions to that might be and how you might be able to be involved. There are a number of different ways that educational performance is assessed in communities. Now, I know that you guys have heard it in this last week, the announcement of results on the testing of Nashville area students with regards to their education attainment. Let me just say, as you look at the National Assessment of Education Progress, there is a national scheme for assessing education performance, and that's what you see here. The important thing for you to realize is that while a large portion of our state is achieving academic performance, 87% of the students are achieving academic performance on a statewide basis measured against our state standards are set really low. And one of the things that the governor has done in this last year is to set in motion a process to raise our education standards, the things that we will measure our progress against, so that in the future we'll be attempting to achieve much higher level of education performance. The Tennessee Diploma Project is a project that the governor has put together that is intended to raise the standards, make us a more rigorous state in terms of creating educational challenge that is directly linked to what students will need to do to be successful, either in continuing their education after high school or going out into the workforce and getting a job. So aligning standards and assessment with the knowledge and skills required beyond high school is one of the first things that needs to be done. And by the way, the governor was motivated to do this by the fact that that he wanted the substance of education, the actual performance of education, to be be consistent with what we were promising businesses who were coming to Tennessee and businesses who already existed in Tennessee. He wanted that to be consistent with what we were promising, and he felt that we were presenting ourselves in such a way that we were promising what we weren't delivering. And so he created the Diploma Project to address that issue. Requiring high school students to take challenging courses that prepare them for life after high school. One of the very small pieces of evidence on this is the fact that students will be required now to take 4 years of math instead of only 3 years of math. There are also additional features to what students will experience in schools that are knowledge and skill based. For instance, there'll be more of a team orientation, more of a problem solving orientation to what they're doing. They'll be, in essence, having to think their way through problem solving. So all of those things are things that businesses have said are really important to do. Build college and work ready measures into the state accountability systems and hold schools accountable for student success. All of that is about elevating the standards by which we measure success. The percentage of metro schools, let's talk a little bit about Nashville and Davidson County at this point in time. And what you see here, in essence, is a chart that says how our schools, note the elementary, middle, and high schools, and how we rank in terms of good standing under No Child Left Behind. Now, the bottom line on this is our greatest challenges at our high school level. We've actually made some great progress in Davidson County in the elementary schools over the last 5 to 6 years. Some of you really familiar with education may remember that I guess about 6 or 8 years ago, the number of third grade students reading at grade level was 46%. And up at a couple of years ago, it had risen to 93%, which was outstanding and significant education improvement. But the bottom line on this is that under the No Child Left Behind legislation, our schools have to make annual yearly progress. That's the term AYP. and we are not making progress to the degree that we need to demonstrate high quality for federal federal No Child Left Behind legislation. So what that means is that the schools that are underperforming get more resource, but less control over those schools is held by the local school board. So what you've been reading in the paper is a debate, and what you've been seeing on TV is a debate about who's going to control Nashville-Davidson County schools. Well, for the last 5 years, those schools have not been making progress sufficient to meet the legislated, the No Child Left Behind law. So the state has had an increasingly high incidence of involvement in governing the schools. Where we stand now, you've all seen the state and Connie Smith have reorganized the central office and the principal levels of management. This year they have an additional opportunity to control the financial resourcing, the financial decisions for the school system. Next year, if we still haven't made adequate progress, then the state will control the school board as well. The school board is the last area left where there is an independent local governance. So what you see here is the scale of status for the No Child Left Behind. In essence, what you've got here, so that you understand it, is a process that a school system moves through over the course of years to determine whether they should control, whether they're meeting performance standards that will that allow them to control their school system. Nashville has just moved to the restructuring 1 category. What that means is the state has the level of control that I've just described to you. When we go to alternative governance restructuring 2, then they're going to be able to displace the school board if they feel that's necessary and take full control over the school system. So let me just sum this up. No Child Left Behind is a federal mandate for outstanding school performance. It is very aggressive. It is very challenging. Nashville, over the course of 5 years, has not been able to meet the standards for improving its school system, although Nashville has made good progress. Because we haven't made enough progress, then there has been an increase in the level of control over our local schools by the state. Next year we would reach that culminating point where the state would have full control over the schools. That's a good point of discussion as we go later on, as we talk later on about whether the state having control of our schools is any better than what we've been experiencing to this point or not. But that's a point of discussion. We're looking at percentage graduation by schools. Again, this doesn't look like very good news, because in essence what we're talking about in the high schools is that the top 4 or 5 schools are actually generating the kind of graduation rate that we should be able to expect from our schools, and none of the rest of the schools are generating that graduation rate. I think the graduation rate now runs about 70% on average for the school system. Now, compared to major urban school systems, that's not bad performance. That's actually could be considered good performance. But from No Child Left Behind legislation, in terms of standards that the state of Tennessee is setting, 70% doesn't get the job done. You could even ask yourself the question from a moral perspective, if 70% graduation rate is getting the job done. But we have obvious demonstration at Hume Fogg, MLK, East Literature, School for the Arts. We can demonstrate that it is possible for us to graduate a high percentage of students from high schools. But this is not good news for us. We need to improve on this. ACT scores by school, let me just say this, we have a 17.8 average score on the ACT test for Nashville-Davidson County schools. 19 is the required minimum for getting into state schools, state colleges and higher education. In other words, we are averaging a 17.8 achievement on the ACT, which is still 1.2 away from being able to get into to state colleges and universities. I read recently where the University of Tennessee in Knoxville is raising their number to 22. So the bottom line on this is our ACT scores, that indicator of whether students are ready for college or not, is below where it needs to be as well. And that's why you're going to see a lot of emphasis in the high school arena preparing kids for that next education opportunity. Okay, students who learn more, this is where the economic argument starts to become formed. High school dropout on average will make $21,600 per year. A 1 percentage point increase in the share of workers who attain a college degree would generate a 4.2% increase in per capita income, which is equal in Middle Tennessee to $3.8 billion. $3.8 billion. Now, without question, this is the strongest element of the economic argument. Everything that we're talking about from a chamber economic argument perspective are tied to these numbers. Over time, over decades, this impact of education for wage earning and salary earning has been documented everywhere in the United States. You see the dramatic difference that takes place between a high school dropout and a college education. But imagine what that $3.8 billion in economic activity does for this region in terms of generating prosperity. And that prosperity will be felt by individuals as well as businesses. It makes every bit of sense to make sure that we are delivering the highest quality of education so that students are prepared to go into their careers or go into college ready to succeed. So this is information that the Chamber created an economic study in 2007. That's something that we're going to be updating on a regular basis. So one of the challenges, I think probably everyone in this room has also heard it, but it's another contributory factor to why we need good education for our young people. The technology sectors in particular require a higher level of education attainment. As the diploma project has pointed out, there are other skills that are of great need to your businesses that you're not able to find in the quantity that you need to find it right now. I was having a meeting the other day with a CEO of a business that's headquartered here who is building a 500-person facility in New Jersey, an IT facility, because he can't find the workforce in Nashville, the IT workforce, to fill that facility here. He'd love to have his 500 employees here, but he can't find the IT employees in Nashville. We're going to have to focus on creating that kind of technological expertise in our education attainment. The other larger message for those of us who could be retiring or nearing retirement age sometime in the next 20 years. The workforce is getting smaller as the retirement force is getting larger. In other words, we will be requiring fewer people to, in essence, support our economy while many of us go out to retirement. They're going to have to be able to be more productive. They're going to have to be able to do more. And we don't want to shrink that population by having poorly educated students outside of that population. So that shrinking workforce is something that makes education right now a real premium. So here are some things that we are doing and we can be doing and that have shown success in other places. First of all, we can address the issues of curriculum in the schools. High school career academies are something that are coming to Nashville. They're actually starting in Nashville. You're going to have the opportunity to participate in those academies. When we took a recent trip to Miami with a group of 160 community leaders and we spent time talking to them about their education system, one of the greatest endorsements that we received from people in the business community down there was the establishment of career academies in Miami, particularly in their hospitality arena. These are areas with a specific, these are career academies with a specific focus, and a specific focus on preparing young people for careers and prosperity in a chosen career area. Hospitality is one that's been very successful down in Miami, but in Nashville, where we have 300 headquarters of health-related businesses, health services is going to be one of those things that career academies here would have to be attuned to. They can have any focus that the curriculum people can design. So we can either use these career academies to create workforce that stimulates what we're already strong in doing, or we can use these career academies to stimulate a workforce where we have a gap, such as in the IT area. Now think about the 500 well-prepared students in the IT area who could go to work for that business that's already based here and ready to expand that job market. The Chamber is helping to coordinate this, and you can be involved in it if you wish. We are creating partnership councils that are advisory groups of business people. This all flows. There is a continuum here. There is a line here. Diploma projects set standards on a statewide level. Local level business involvement in helping design curriculum that goes with this, with these career academies, and then actual participation from business people in developing those curriculums. So that's one of the tangible things that we're working on that impacts directly into the classroom. From a leadership perspective, and we get asked this question a lot, why does the Chamber have a political action committee that's involved in school board elections? Well, the Chamber has a political action committee because, first of all, the leadership of the Chamber said that we need to be involved in that kind of activity. But it really speaks to this fundamental issue that leadership is one of the key elements of making our school system successful again. Whether it's at the school board level and having good governance of the school system, or it's at the central office level and having effective support and leadership of the school district out throughout the district, or it's in schools where you're depending on principals to provide leadership in instruction and management. It's important for us as a business community to be able to contribute to the efforts of making sure that we have the kind of leadership that we need to be prosperous and effective in our schools. So that's one of the things that we're involved in. We don't back away from it. And we have a very good and broad and diversely representative group that every election cycle takes a look at and spends a year researching who are the most capable people to provide that kind of leadership to the schools. Finally, adequate and dedicated funding. We as a chamber, you as business leaders, and the community will need to be dedicated to providing adequate funding to the schools to make these improvements. There is no question, and the schools are already making adjustments in terms of taking their existing resources and redeploying them in a more effective way. When you look at central office expenses, our school system has one of the lowest percentages of overhead administrative office expenses when compared on a nationwide level. There will come a time when this community is going to have to provide more resources to the schools to achieve the quality that we're looking for. These are other ways to become involved. The Chamber has other education committees. The Friends of Metro Schools is a grassroots organization that is being built to support particularly funding and resourcing organizations the schools effectively. The Alliance for Public Education does one thing. It raises private money that can then be deployed in the schools according to the school's priorities. You may have seen over the last couple of years music instruments going into the schools that the schools can't afford to buy, but the Alliance for Public Education is providing. Pencil Foundation, I'll bet a lot of you are already involved in Pencil, and if you aren't, it's a direct channel into the schools that provides your expertise and your resource from your business directly into a school in a positive way. Alignment Nashville was a creation of the Chamber. It's a separate organization at this point, a spinoff. What they do is make sure that nonprofit organizations that are entering the schools are entering with priority and effectiveness in terms of what the schools really need. So they're coordinating and channeling that activity. And then Success PAC is that political action group that raises money which they then give to candidates who are running for election and have been, that they've had the opportunity to visit with. I think it's clearly evident to everyone in this room and many people beyond this room that education is the key to prosperity for the individual and for the community. We have clear evidence that we are not performing to the standard that we feel is beneficial and acceptable for Nashville. There is great desire in this community to raise our standards and to achieve that higher level of performance. It's going to take the coordinated effort of all of us and even financial investment of all of us to achieve the kind of standard of education that we're looking for. But in the process, the payoffs will be a prosperous, growing, stable Nashville that is creating a quality lifestyle for individuals in the community that continues to make Nashville an attractive place for us to live.